You don't overhand it. You like toss it to each other.
It's
you don't
catch. It's catch with a timer. It's all that hot potato is. Today on NOCLIP,
what kind of
talking about hot potato.
What kind of extreme hot potato have you been playing?
Welcome to NOCLIP. I'm Chad Rowland.
I'm JJ Artemis.
And I'm Andy Kinnick.
And today we're going to be talking about Monster Hunter World, which is an action RPG which was released in 2018 and published and developed by Capcom. Now, before we say literally anything at all about this game, I do want to give a shout out here to Gaijin Hunter, Eric's Gaming, the Monster Hunter subreddit, Kiranico, all of the online resources that exist surrounding the Monster Hunter franchise, because this is one of the most inscrutable games ever developed. And while I have a lot of history with it, thanks to the previous 2 generations of this game, I don't know how you guys got on. I mean, you played for you, JJ.
Right.
Andy, this is your first, Monster Hunter experience. Mm-hmm. And I know from experience that the first time that you play a Monster Hunter game is, just a brick wall.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if I didn't have you to ask questions, I would have bounced off this game really hard.
Mm-hmm.
So...
And trust me when I say that having played a previous game in the series is in no way helpful to trying to get through. It's just under 100 hours on 4U before I finally was no, I can't do it. I can't keep climbing. But World had just enough convenience features to let me kind of it almost feels like moving through a jungle. Well, there's lots of annoying weeds and things that sting you, and lots of tiny, small individual annoyances that build up over time. But you end up breaking through the canopy at one point and see this ridiculous vista, which in this metaphor is the cool monsters.
Yeah.
That's one of the best metaphors you've ever made on the show, JJ. Yeah. It actually made sense.
Oh, wow.
Specifically, it's like going through a forest in this game, in which the first time that you go through it, you have to force back the vines and break through to the other side, but then after that you just run through it and there's no clipping at all. And you're I gotta hunt this monster for the 37th time.
Never understood how those vine things work, because they respawn. I confirmed 100% that
they respawn?
They come back. They do come back, because I went through the same area 2 days in a row, because it was the same basic run, and had to force myself through the vines again, and I was wait.
I know that I have pushed this
I noticed that they come back in certain places as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, either way, that is a ridiculously tiny mechanical minutia to start with. So let's back it up a bit before we get too far into it. The thing that the Monster Hunter community, I think, would want to know about this is what perspective we're coming at this from. So what weapons did you guys use in this game?
Oh, good point. In this game, I spent pretty much all of my time with longsword and heavy bow gun and a little bit of sword and shield, just because it's what I used in 4U and I was a little bit already comfortable with it. But what I like out of longsword kind of ended up replacing most of the cool stuff that I would do with sword and shield, except for stupid hats. Sword and shield set's much better at incorporating stupid hats into the things that you want to do.
That is true.
And that was the main utility of that weapon to me.
I played the demo when Chad downloaded it, and I thought that I liked the Charge Blade?
Charge Blade.
And found out when I actually started playing the game that I was wrong. So then I switched to the Switch Axe and never looked back. Love the Switch Axe.
Wait, the Charge Blade and the Switch Axe are different weapons?
Yes.
Oh.
The Charge Blade is a sword and a shield that turn into a huge axe.
Uh-huh.
And the Switch Axe is a huge axe that turns into a sword.
It is.
It's like a lightsaber. It's a glowy light.
Yeah, I can see how that can be confusing.
Yeah,
but
they look similar enough.
Yeah, Switch Axe is a weapon that's all about consistent and constant DPS, whereas the Charge Blade is like the Street Fighter weapon that's all about like stringing together combos in order to build to a big bursty thing. I love both the weapons, and we get to me, which is I love all the weapons in this game. I have played all of them. I like to consider myself a jack of all trades in the Monster Hunter series. However, if like my guild card is to be believed, then I played the majority of this game with Hunting Horn and Gun Lance. And I'm also really close on Hammer and Greatsword as well.
I think it's fair to say that you're at least a jack of most trades.
Yeah.
At Monster Hunter.
Yeah. In fact, there are only 3 weapons in the game that I don't really like click with.
Yeah.
Generally, and don't like prefer playing them just in any situation. And those are the longsword, the sword and shield, and the charge blade. Like those 3 weapons, for some reason, I just cannot wrap my head around. Sword and shield feels to me like it's too like piddly, and like you don't even get a second sword like in like with the dual blades. So I just like I'm like, what the fuck is this? I don't even need that.
Yeah,
which is of course bullshit. The sword and shield is a really good weapon. I'm just bad with it.
So I've got to be curious, considering that you've gone through this many trades in your, 200 hours or something you've put in the world at this point?
204.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Because I knew you would ask.
I neglected the 4. Pardon.
It's very important.
Yeah.
Did it feel like playing 14 distinct video games? Because, my goodness, is the amount of, like, complete mechanical difference between weapons absurd. And not even just in, like, actual gameplay when you're hunting monsters. The amount of, like, side things you need to learn and menus you need to fiddle with between weapons also continues to balloon out between different weapon types.
Yeah. This is also part of why those 3 weapons that I named are weapons that, like, I don't really do well with, but feel like if I just like played them enough, eventually I would. I feel like that might just not be the case with the Charge Blade, because I had a second character on 4U that I played like 150 hours on that only used Charge Blade, and I still suck with it. So I don't know. I used to do some 140s back in 4U with the Charge Blade. Shoutouts to my 140 homies.
Is that like a drug or something?
No, they used to have the true end game in 4U were these crazy difficult single monster challenges. Similar to like the investigations in this game, like the tempered investigations.
Gotcha.
But they like scaled way out of control, and for Teostra specifically, I like to use Charge Blade.
Speaking of scaling out of control, how many ends does this game have?
Like distinct endings?
Yes.
Depending on how you want to look at it, you only see the credits once, which
True.
is unique for this game, actually, as far as I know, of the ones that I've played.
Did you really not see the credits after the second Zora Magdaros thing?
I don't think so. I'm pretty
shocked.
sure you get credits only after defeating Xeno'jiva.
Oh, huh. Well.
Actually, I don't want to go in that direction. I kind of want to talk about like the weapons and the design, because I feel like that's a lot of the mechanical meat of this game. So like specifically, what did you guys like try a bunch of different weapons and then settle on the one that you on the ones that you played with, or did you like pick some stuff and then just at random ended up liking it?
I guess both for me. I started out like trying to try a number of the weapons, and then like I tried the sword and shield because I think the game starts you out with it. I messed around with that for a bit, and I agree it feels like you're like fighting giant dinosaurs with a pocket knife.
Right.
Like it just doesn't feel good for some reason, even though it is a decent weapon, you know. And yeah, the Charge Blade's super complicated, and then I went to the Switch Axe next, and I really liked the mobility of it. Like, one of the things that's off-putting to me about a lot of the weapons is that you get, like, kind of locked into animations, or if you start an attack facing the wrong direction, it's, like, 5 seconds before you can stop and like actually attack the monster.
Yeah.
The switch axe in the axe form has a lot of mobility, and it's easy to cancel out of stuff, and that really clicked with me. So I was like, this is my weapon.
Right. That's actually why I like the switch axe in 4U, because in that game I actually played very differently, because I played dual blades and switch axe more or less the same amount, like 700 some hunts with each, and also the gun lance. I just really like the gun lance.
Do you like knock people over with the gun portion of the lance? That
like human people, like other players?
Oh,
yeah, I do that occasionally, but it's usually accidental.
Sorry. I keep saying people because the monsters have so much personality in this game that I consider them human beings.
Right.
But
monster beings.
But as far as like my weapon decision procedure, when I first booted up the game, I of course did the thing that you probably shouldn't do for your own fun, but I wanted to do, which was just immediately go and find like the secret training mode, which I actually had to like Google for to figure out.
You mean the room with the stump?
Yeah, stump room. Yeah,
Stump
There's
room.
also barrels that explode and other nice little hills.
That's true.
There's lots. It's a good room.
It's a solid room for training.
But it's like
It's a training room.
it's like 3 rooms deep in the main hub room, though. So I had to, like all things in this game, I just had to Google it because.
I kind of, like, because to me, I was like, oh, the training room only took me like 4 hours before I knew it was there. So that's like a real easy mechanic.
But yeah, so I went there, and then it has the box right out in the open, so you can just switch between all the different training weapons.
Right.
And considering that when it comes to actual input responses, I'm an impatient asshole. So I really quickly narrowed in on weapons like the sword and shield that I was used to that had relatively fast, relatively short gaps between all the animations and more room for you to interact and dodge and move in between the things that you were doing.
Right.
And so it was essentially just that consideration. Me at the time not wanting to fuck with any ammunition or other coatings or other nonsense.
Yeah, I was in the same boat. I was like, I don't even want to touch this shit.
Yeah.
It's like a whole other layer.
Indeed. So I didn't want to deal with any of that, and I made a specific decision that I wanted to use a weapon where I wasn't always going to be just like nubbing at people's feet.
Right.
I didn't want to feel like a really angry leech like I did when I was playing Sword and Shield. So
see, dual blades is like the exact like cackling imp weapon where you just like slice at ankles until they fall over. You stand in their face, you literally like do like a pose to go into demon mode, and then you just like Wah!
Yeah, yes.
It's that I think is like the epitome of just being a douche weapon, which is why I've played like literally hundreds of hours of it.
I'd also like to point out that the weapon that is literally like being a douche also has you rave at some point for its maximum damage.
You're right, yeah.
And is information there to be correlated.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I wanted to make sure I could hit things that weren't ankles. So I was like, oh, the long sword seems long and like it can hit other things.
This is true, yeah.
Yeah, so it ended up being kind of perfect for me, and I think I made the right decision. I spent like the first 100 hours of this game doing nothing but longsword. And then at the end of it, I was like, I want to have some diversity of my experience. What's the least longswordy weapon I could possibly pick to try and learn? And then ended up being heavy bowgun, where you don't really dodge as a way to prevent damage, and you have a shield instead of a counter, and you hit at long range, and it's the most fiddly fucking ammo system I've ever experienced in a game.
Yeah, because bowguns are something that like I literally never got into in 4U, which is unbelievable, I guess. I played light bowgun a little bit in 4U, but in World I finally got into them like earnestly, and honestly the whole the whole thing that kept me back from playing them was when you click in the left stick on the menu and there's just literally a table.
Yeah, just a spreadsheet.
It's just like, here's a bunch of names of ammo, and then like the words low or high or fast, slow, a plus and minus, little arrows. There's a fucking key on the bottom, which the existence of the key is bad enough. It doesn't matter that it only has 2 items on it, and they're pretty simple to understand. But yeah, I was just like, I don't want to deal with this shit, and then just left.
The secret is that heavy bowgun isn't a weapon. It's like 5 weapons or something stupid.
Yeah.
And you gotta stare at the spreadsheet for a long time on each one of them to figure out which of the 5 different, like, rough bowguns it's trying to be.
This is my problem, is because I loved... Okay, so I've made both. I've made 2 heavy bowguns, which, by the answer to your question, did it feel like playing 14 different video games?
Mm-hmm.
Is no. It felt like playing more of than that. Because I've made 2 heavy bowguns, and now with the Kulv Tarath quest, have like 1,000 more to pick from.
Mm-hmm.
But I have one that's specifically for spread shot, and then I made essentially the exact set that you use with the shield on the Shattercrest.
Mm-hmm.
Why I don't use a shield on the one that requires me to be directly in front of the monster, I don't know, and I need to remedy, but still. And that feels totally different. But light bowgun, I think, has more of the problem that you're talking about, in that I'm constantly just, like, walking in a circle around the monster while I'm like, I don't know, maybe I should use the sleep, or... exhaust ammo, I could rapid fire that, I guess that would be good. It's just like, I'm like, I don't know what to do with this thing. I just end up shooting normal shot the whole hunt.
It's so abstracted, too, from, like, what the actual experience of using a weapon like that would be like. Because, like, essentially, if you're looking at that spreadsheet, what that's really representing to you for the bow guns is, like, all the different types of ammo and clip sizes for that ammo the gun supports, and how well it fires it in a couple of different metrics.
Yeah.
So, like, there's one gun that in universe has to have, like, 14 different places to put various clips of various sizes and supports.
Yeah, because the guns themselves, like, you load by putting, like, you have all of your ammo loaded when you start.
Right.
So, presumably, there's just, like, 1,000, like, it's like a paintball gun with, like, 1,000 hoppers on it.
Right,
You just,
right.
like, are pouring ammo into all of them. It's really weird.
Very weird.
That is how they chose to do it.
But it is diverse, and
It sure is.
yeah, and that is a diversity I can absolutely respect, because I essentially went from playing a game that felt like, essentially playing like a really intense close-up action RPG to like a Gears of War style third-person shooter. And the only thing that changed was the mechanics on my end, and none of the things I interacted with changed, and it still felt appropriate and engaging.
Yeah, it's like Marcus Phoenix could, like, walk into a multiplayer game, like, invade someone in Dark Souls.
Yeah.
Like, you just, like, show up with a chainsaw bayonet. You're like, oh, looks like it's time to, like, go to town, guys.
Like, and that speaks volumes about how well designed pretty much every large monster you encounter will ever be, because each of those enemies is designed to support, and as far as I know does so well, playing 14 different mechanic sets in opposition to itself. Like, your players could bring so many different complete play styles to the fore against, I don't know, your Anjanath or Big T-Rex.
Right.
And all of them have to be able to kill it, and all of them have to be fun while doing so. And even when I went, like, as far polar opposite as I could on the kind of engagement that I'd have with the game, it still felt really, really fun to fight the monsters.
That's something that stood out to me a lot as well. That, like, it was surprising for me to figure out that, like, actually would like to confirm with Chad, like, don't all the other games have, like, way more monsters than this?
Not all, but most. This has,
Okay, yeah.
this has fewer monsters than the majority. Like, the most recent game that came out, which was Generations, had, like, an unholy number of monsters in comparison.
Yeah.
But that'll just happen.
Yeah,
you know?
it stood out to me, like, how well designed all the monsters were, and it seems hard to imagine they could add, like, that many more and have them all, like, stay that high of a quality.
This is a very old franchise at this point, and some of the monsters they brought in, which we can sort of talk about the design of here. Needless to say, I think this is probably the most prepared that I've been for a podcast episode. But yeah, like the monster designs in this game are kind of unique from previous games because of the new way that you interact with the environment. The fact that the environment is even interactable is actually kind of a new thing. But specifically the fact that there's a lot more... Like, people talked about the verticality in 4U when they introduced, like, the mounting mechanic and jumping attacks and stuff like that. But now you can, like, climb a tree and, like, go way high up and jump way far down and do all kinds of shit. Run on walls, hop off them, do a weird, like, jumping attack. It's crazy the number of things that you can do in this game, and so they had to adjust their monster design because of it.
Yeah.
And yet they still were able to bring back things like Rathian, which of course they were going to bring back because it's like the Monster Hunter monster. And it really with very little change to its overall design.
Right. I feel like a big thing that they have in their favor when being able to manipulate the designs of these enemies is because the whole appeal of the game is you trying to fight something that seems like ludicrously above you all the time. Everything you face has an enormous health pool, which means it's really hard for you to break specific encounters as they designed them easily, because nothing you do will ever be able to deal enough damage, like in a spike, for example, to completely nullify something that gets put against you.
Right.
Like in another game, for example, where you're, like, say some kind of like third-person action game, where normally it only takes a few hits to be able to down any enemy or encounter that you placed in front of, and you just have to time it correctly.
Right.
And in a game like that, bringing a chain gun into it would obviously break the hell out of it, because even if the chain gun did anywhere close to enough damage to be useful, you would just mow everything down before it got near you. But because everything that you're fighting in this game is some kind of like monstrous Hulk that can tear you limb from limb, they can balance everything against each other in terms of their DPS in kind of a spreadsheety way, where, like, as long as everyone's kind of decreasing the health at roughly the same rate over time, the sample size is big enough that you can make the average kind of whatever you want it to be between all the different weapons. And from there, it just becomes a question of how do you program attacks and AI into these monsters where they still do things that's fun and engaging no matter what distance the enemy is from the monster. Like, you want every monster to have a big jumping attack to go against the people that have guns, or some kind of like really fun jump or slash for the people close to them. Like,
Those like monsters have ranged options, things like that, to keep hunters on their toes. I do want to continue on this thread, but I want to sidebar very quickly.
Yeah.
To address like a big talking point about this game.
Ooh.
In Generations, they switched the attack display to what they call true raw, which is where it shows the amount of damage that the weapon does actually, which like the number that's going to be factored into the calculation for damage when you make an attack. And then in this game, they went back to what people are calling like the bloated attack value system. The reason for that is basically what you just described, where you want to like, if you like the amount of damage done on average should be about the same across weapons of like a certain rarity, but they don't want to give the impression that like, oh, my greatsword and my sword and shield do exactly the same amount of damage.
yeah.
So even if the true raw is the same, they want to inflate the greatsword damage to let people know like how they are.
Yeah.
But the people who say that they should just allow you to toggle it because in the end game it becomes kind of confusing and it's not, the mysticism isn't there anymore, that's correct. That's what they should do.
It's because the utility of those numbers, and in most damage numbers in most video games, generally RPG or otherwise, isn't in order for the player to sit back and make calculations about like how efficiently over time they can take out this boss. The numbers are there mostly for the player to make comparisons and trade-offs against other numbers of other weapons or strategies and options that they have. So in that kind of situation, inflating it is fine if it accents the different trade-offs and comparisons. Like making the greatsword seem like it deals so much more damage because of the inflation value is fine, because the actual trade-off to that weapon is you deal huge chunks of damage at one time with huge wait times.
Right.
Yeah.
That was the whole sidebar. I just, for some reason, that debate keeps raging, but I feel like there's a very clear game design reason for it to be there.
Oh yeah, when the differences between the numbers that are on screen are on all in the magnitude of hundreds, it's way more exciting for the player when they can look at that and feel that it's different. From the perspective of people who've played 7,000 hours of this video game, which will be most people who actually want to talk about this or even know that it exists, it is probably like, it's straight inconvenient because the mysticism is away and you're at the point where you know that all these things over time are going to like average out in roughly the same rate. It's not that big of a choice. But yeah, it's a good decision for people like me who want to look at the weapons and be like, oh, this is a big fat cool thing, and not try and do math.
Okay. While we're on this subject, just briefly, I do want to say the numbers thing, like because it is an RPG, and RPGs love fucking numbers. It has this whole situation where in this game, like I was talking about that, like the feeling the magic of like being deceived by the weapon numbers or whatever, also has this side thing where in all previous games it didn't display damage numbers, so you couldn't attack a thing and know exactly how much damage you were doing. Now as I am as barely a person anymore, and more just a living calculator for Monster Hunter gear loadouts, I feel like the damage numbers are helpful to me in min-maxing and figuring out like what thing I want to do the most.
Right.
I feel like it ruins the early game experience, and it sucks that it doesn't suck that this game sold as well as it did, but the fact that the majority of Monster Hunter players, this was their first game now, the fact that they've always had damage numbers is gonna like, because part of the fun in the original games was being like, oh no, like I have no idea how long it's gonna take me to kill this thing because I'm just whacking it and it doesn't seem to be showing any damage, and then like having the very sort of natural way that this game shows monsters getting weaker, like exhaustion, limping, part breaks, stuff like that. It all feels very good without the damage numbers.
Yeah. I love the damage numbers. I was shocked to find out that they were never in the games before this. I already am the kind of person that hates when bosses don't have health bars. This game gets around it with very, like you brought up, like very good design where like if you whack at a specific place enough, it starts to show like scratches and wear, and like you can tell that you're breaking the monster down, so that like supplements a health bar because you can like tell you're actually doing something. Like the damage numbers are just like fantastic, I think, because like, and I think they're encouraging in the early game.
I guess that's probably true because. Well, my first experience with 4U, which I don't even know at this point how I got through that game sometimes, because like it seems so not me. I think I just literally didn't have anything else to do. But there were times when I would just be like butting my head up against something and just being like, I have no idea what's going on. I don't know if I'm doing anything good.
Yeah, like I think in this kind of a game that's like can be so hard to wrap your head around all the mechanics, like knowing that you're actually like how much damage you're actually doing and like being able to tell which part of the monsters are weak so you can actually feel like you're doing the right thing is very valuable.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with Andy on specifically its utility as showing different weakness points. I'm at the point where, and this might be a thing for all I know, I would turn it off now if I could, just because I want to turn off as many of the menus in this game that are on screen during the actual hunts as I can.
Good news, they just updated the game so you can now make the HUD bigger.
Oh, good! I don't... The game is good enough at communicating through animation and visuals, and even some like sparks and light in the way that your weapons react when they hit weak areas versus normal areas versus bad, thick areas.
Right.
It's not really this thick the right word there.
Well, it depends on the... it depends on two things. One,
like
it depends on what monster we're talking about. And two, it depends on whether you're spelling it with a K or two C's.
Which also depends monster to monster, of course.
Right, but speaking of thickness with two C's, I did want to talk about one monster design specifically. Well, I want to talk about a bunch of monster designs, but the one that I think is most important to this game. So you played 4U.
Yes.
And in Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate, the first big monster that you fight is a monster called the Great Jaggy.
Mm-hmm.
And people love the Great Jaggy. He was like the first monster in Monster Hunter, like on the PlayStation 2. And it's kind of like traditional that this dude show up and be like a shitty bird guy. And everyone's like, it'd be great. And like people wanted like level 140, like huge, super hard Great Jaggies and stuff. The Great Jaggy as a first monster sucks. Like, he is terrible as a first monster because he does not do anything to enforce what players should be doing in the game other than, like, did you know about the dodge button? The Great Jagras is a masterclass in a tutorial monster because he is the first dude that you're going to come up to that's going to be, like, an actual threat. But he's also an enormous punching bag. Mm-hmm. To the point where his hitbox even becomes larger if you do enough damage to him and he goes and eats like a big Aptonoth or whatever they're called. So you get this like both the first monster experience where you fight a monster and it's like actually a long drawn out fight. You're using entry level weapons, so it's going to take you a while to kill him. Mm-hmm. But you also get that catharsis of like every attack you land hits and pops up a big number. Like it's so good, and I don't know, I just love Great Jaggers.
It really shows also the decision to make it so that he, I think almost exclusively, some other big monsters interact with other big monsters, but at least for a long time, the Great Jaguars is the first thing you'll see that'll straight up eat other things in the environment and just like walk away. And that's a great way to tutorialize to the player how things in the environment that you're in interact with each other as you go, which ends up being like a major factor in later hunts once you start getting more big monsters at a time in a zone and they start having turf wars, or I guess now after the update, sometimes just picking each other up and throwing each other large distances.
Yeah, we got Andy recently got to the quest where you fight a Legiana and a Odogaron, and like I'd never seen that quest played since the update, mm-hmm. and just like a Devil Deer just like rolled in and just like ate the Odogaron and then left.
Yeah. Also like a Titsiaku showed up as well, so it was like a shit show in this one spot. And yeah, like the Devil Joe just rolled in and just like wrecked whatever it's called, Odogaron or whatever.
Doggy, the red dog.
Yeah, the red
dog.
It just wrecked him. Like it just like to the point where you think he would stop, he just kept going, and until he finally ran away.
Yeah, that sucks when you're actually fighting the Devil Joe, but when you aren't, it's just the best. You can just like pop a squat, like wait for him to leave.
And that's really probably my favorite feature of the end game is how much the environmental interactions start to get highlighted more and more between the large monsters. Mm-hmm. And like I think probably my best memory with this game going forward will be once, is it actually pronounced Betelgeuse? What's the real name of that creature?
Yeah, I pronounce it either Betelgeuse or Basilgeuse.
Okay.
Like it's spelled, like the ending anyway is spelled like Beetlejuice, like
right.
the star.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that would be a safe understanding.
So once that guy starts first showing up in hunts as the first time that you see like, oh, sometimes a huge thing that you can't deal with will just appear and wreck your day and you've got to deal with that. I love that as a twist on what has until that point just been like UV monster, one-on-one, prolonged combats.
Right.
And the amount of comedy that it constantly introduced into my experience, especially since like, at that point you've been playing the game for a long time, a lot of your behaviors get automated, mm-hmm. and I was a stupid person and often wasn't paying enough attention to the audio cues. So sometimes I just like wouldn't hear when the first part of its little soundtrack would enter, and I was supposed to be like, uh-oh, look to the skies. There's a fucking explosion coming your way.
Like, ah!
Yeah. Probably my favorite one that I ever... Probably my favorite memory with this game entirely is I was in the Coral Highlands, the best zone. The best zone.
We'll talk about zones, but I agree.
Yes.
Aesthetically, for sure.
For sure. And jumped off one of the many massive cliffs to try and get like a downward plunging attack on a Legiana that was just fucking around downstairs, scratching up things and making loud noises.
We're just gonna acknowledge right now that we both know that you said clips instead of cliffs, and but if we didn't say something about it, it would have just kept building, and one of us would have died.
Okay. Thanks. So speaking of things dying, so I leap off this just enormous cliff where it takes like a solid 3 count for you to hit the ground.
Right.
And it's like mid-air as I'm like winding up for the slash when I just hear like dun 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 dun, and then right on the last duh comes in like the bezel juice with the scream on like the downward slash, and like it's going over the Legiana, and I hit it mid-air as it's flying and mounts it instead, and then it just like flies off a different direction.
Yeah, it goes to a different area.
Yeah, it's a completely different zone, just like carries me totally away. I'm just like, no! It's like the 14th time it's interrupted me at that point in my progression. It really gained a personality for being this just piece of shit that always ruined my day in the best way.
My question is, as somebody who's played For You, how do you compare Basil to Seregios?
You act like I remember what these monsters are from
Cool.
For You.
In For You, there were 3 monsters that could invade. Seregios, Devil Joe, and Rajang. Rajang was a huge ape that only invaded in G rank. So the important ones for this discussion are Devil Joe, who's back, and Seregios, who looks even a little bit like Basil, but his shitty thing is that he could make you start bleeding, which is the worst status to have. And I really, I hated Basil for the longest time because, the fact that he would drop exploding things on the ground was almost like... I was like, this is just inescapable death all the time when this happens, especially when I'm using something like the gun lance, which doesn't, uproot and leave all that fast. And actually, even Insect Glaive is, fucked over pretty massively by that guy, too, because he's always in the air. You can't evade him by, jumping and then going over here, because he'll just fly in and take your head off. But, I don't know. By the end of the game, I kind of loved him. But now I'm just glad that Devil Joe is in the game as well, because it's more fun that way.
Devil Joe just always comes off to me like a big meat mass. It's like the angriest sausage I will ever know.
The community refers to him as a pickle, because
okay.
he's green and bumpy.
It's fair. That is fair. Yeah, he's just... He's one of the monsters that, especially after the update, I just tend to try and avoid or let him have his space. He's one of the few things that has constantly kept my respect, and even in the end game feels like a thing that could eat me at any time. So I try and back off.
That's I think the appropriate reaction to have to Devil Joe.
God, every monster is so good. I feel like you could write a webcomic starring all of these various monsters.
Yeah, I was gonna say all the designs feel like they're good enough that they could be on the cover.
Right.
All the designs are great.
As somebody who doesn't have the game in a physical form, who is on the cover?
It's I think it's a Rathian fighting an Anjanath is on the cover.
Oh, so there isn't a bot. That's I guess Anjanath would be the flagship.
He's like the heavily highlighted one in the early game.
Yeah.
It depends on which box you get, because some of them I know also have a cover art that have, I don't know, Mr. Spiny Means. Who's
Nergigante.
Nergigante.
Who I think is
Mr. Spiny Means.
Mr. Spiny Means. But I think that he would definitely be the flagship, I guess. Though it's weird that he's an Elder Dragon. Well, he's not an Elder... He counts as an Elder Dragon.
Yeah, there are many things that aren't dragons and don't seem particularly Elder that are still Elder Dragons, because...
I think he's referred to as, the Devourer of Elder Dragons or something like that.
He's not, classified as an Elder Dragon as far as I know, but the game mechanically treats him as such in just full stop.
Right.
No difference.
Indeed. Biologists in this game are kind of shit.
What now?
The fictional biologists in this game, they don't seem very good at their jobs.
I I don't know. I mean, they don't. What do you expect them to do?
Not murder everything they encounter.
They don't murder everything they encounter. They can't murder everything they encounter. They suck at fighting.
No, not the biologists themselves are murdering. You are part of a large enterprise whose entire goal is to murder monsters for some kind of nebulous research goals. Even the monsters that you capture alive and sedate, they just
then put in like a Mad Max Thunderdome.
Right. For you to murder for your own amusement and nothing else.
Mm-hmm. And those sweet, sweet parts.
Where is that Thunderdome? Fictionally, also?
Where is that? The arena?
Yeah. Not the arena that has the wall in the center that pops up. That one is established to be on the coast somewhere, and it's like an island that you ship yourself out to.
Is this a real thing?
Yes. If you turn around from where that you start on a ship, and you can go out and look around, and you see all the different ships, and you're like, oh, this must be just another place on the shore that you go to.
I think you've discovered just how much of like a mechanical exercise this game is for me.
Very much. But there's none of it. There's absolutely no. I don't know where the Thunderdome is or how they get things there.
In my mind, it exists somewhere between Astera and the desert area. The
Wildspire Wastes.
Yeah, the wastes.
They just
it's like a
little
mountain.
Yeah. Yeah. Or they just found one with like a little open volcano peak, and they just fucking pushed a Jagras in there and just let it.
Also, the special arena. Fuck the special arena, just like wholesale because of the fact that you have to crawl through that thing to get into it. I've played this game for 204 fucking hours, and I will still run into the water area and go like, oh wait, and then like have to turn around and go crawl through the thing.
Wait, really?
They put a nice lantern next to the hole in the ground.
I'm usually just holding up and R1.
Okay, we see the problem now. We see the problem. It's so the monsters can't get out of the special arena.
Yeah, it's for the world building, Chad.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, literally, mechanically, it's so they can't leave the arena and come outside.
Well, they can't. Well, okay, guess in the arenas they don't ever like jump.
Oh, they can get up on the sides.
I've never had that happen.
Yeah,
that'll happen occasionally. And also, like, there will be the penultimate quest, I guess, depending on how you want to look at it. Is fighting like 4 different monsters in the special arena, and one of them is Diablos, who somehow has the ability to dig under the ground and then pop up at the top, which is just stupid.
Well, I mean, they can do that in the actual map.
Yeah, they crawl up the
little
like
cliffs and stuff.
Yeah, the plateaus and whatnot.
So scary. So many of those things and the things they can do. And really, you seem so dopey by comparison, which is one of my favorite things about the way that you're characterized. Because no matter how late into the game you get, and no matter how much fucking, like, Warcraft, like, chest-sized pauldrons you accumulate on your person, if you ever have to, like, sheath and run, you just look like the stupidest jackass, just, like, doing your big old jog.
And if I remember correctly, they've even like toned it down in this game.
Yeah,
like I feel like watching the character run in other games is like way more doofy.
Yeah, and you're always like running. Like, well, I love it. It's kind of in this game, but it was worse than the worse, quote unquote, meaning way better. Is like if you had the camera facing your character as you're running, like he's always like looking over his shoulder, like it's a total cartoon run. In the old games, like after you would drink a potion, like you would drink it quickly, but then you would flex. Like it was an unavoidable action to flex after drinking a potion, which means that you're like it basically takes the same amount of time, but you were stationary. They toned that down. They so your character isn't quite as much of a dumbass.
They really do speak to the strange levity that I find spread over all of this game. Not strange as in bad, just strange as in just like totally inconsistent almost.
If another developer had made this game, and I mean, because Capcom is such like a large company, obviously, you can't like nail down exactly like, oh, this is Capcom's like thing.
Yeah.
The director is a guy named Yuya Tokuda, who's actually like I believe the son of like the CEO of Capcom.
Oh, geez.
Which is a little bit weird, but at the same time, he sort of has like he's the like creative vision behind this game for the most part, and like I think that's sort of like where this levity comes from, because it's always been in the series, and it's the first thing that made me go like, the hell is this? Like, in comparison to the rest of the game. Like, you're constantly being followed around by a dumb cat who just does weird shit all the time.
Does goofy stuff with a big smile on his face and, like, throws out puns and bad, like, Pokemon speak.
Right, yeah. It feels like it's, like, a bunch of anime tropes. Like, it feels like back... I mean, this is just my, like, speculation, but it feels like when they made the first one, like on the PS2, they were like, we want this like action RPG, it's mostly mechanical, you just like fight big bosses, and it's like, well, like how do we like, you know, aesthetically coat this, or like, you know, like give it a personality or whatever, like just like throw on some anime tropes. It's like it feels like they weren't very concerned with the tone or the consistency of that kind of stuff, and then it's just like over time become tradition.
It has blended into something that is itself a cool callback.
Yeah, I think in this game it's actually like executed pretty well. Like it doesn't feel jarring in the way that when I would watch Chad play for you like over his shoulder sometimes, it just like stood out like a sore thumb.
Yeah. When I said inconsistent, I didn't mean like inconsistent with itself, like a game with sharp tonal shifts. This game's tone is pretty consistent. It's just inconsistent with like what you would expect the tone of a game to be, where you like fight dinosaurs with huge fucking swords.
Yeah.
Like
the tone of Monster Hunter World is dramatic irony. Like that is its entire purpose.
I feel like even the weapons are kind of like ironically silly. Like they're just like these massive fucking like goofy switchy like laser sword whatever weapons like.
Well, that's the laser sword part's new, but you were correct entirely. It's fucking strange because like even like if you go back in the series, there's all this discussion like that they thankfully toned down a lot in World because it doesn't make sense and is not the point of this game. But where there's like three main races that are essentially like the classic humans, elves, dwarves thing in Monster Hunter, where there's humans and there's wyverians, and then I forget the third because whatever, who cares? But they're always like, humans are the only race that can really be hunters because of whatever. And nobody ever goes like, because over the years, humans have somehow developed the strength to carry a sword that's like 1,000 feet long. It's so weird because they try and keep everything as grounded as possible aesthetically, except for that.
Even like mechanically to some extent, because for most games in which you have the ability to carry around 7 tons of steel on your person at any time,
right,
you're pretty like weak. Your character is not very strong, and the further into the game you go, even at the end game, when the monsters end up scaling in power faster than you scale in power, and you can just get fucking eaten and die, no matter how good you are at the game. We've already talked about how dopey you walk and how much you can just like trip and fall over and how long it takes you to do anything for most of the weapons in this game. Like, you don't feel like a super empowered cool guy
right
most of the time. It takes a lot of effort for you to know your weapon and your timings and your openings well enough for you to feel like you're like an awesome hunter. You have to really earn that in a way that aesthetically you don't often have to in a lot of other games where you carry huge swords.
Yeah, it's like, I remember when I first tried out the Switch axe, it's like this giant hulking axe, and the handle's only like this big.
Yeah, you just kind of like hold it. It's just the length of your hand.
Yeah, it's like the length of both your hands, and that's like in the axe form is like mobility mode. You can run around like quickly. Yeah. You're just like carrying it effortlessly, and then for some reason when you switch it, even though it's the same exact size and weight, it is just now flipped. It is now somehow heavier, and you have to like stagger around and use it like a greatsword.
It's the center of balance is all different.
Yeah.
You're like yeah.
Now that it's all more in one place,
I can run
it's really
around
weighing
with
you
it.
down.
Yeah.
Though I get what you're angling at with the anime tropes, Andy.
Right.
I think I agree with you. That was almost certainly
Like
the way that it started.
Right, yeah, like anime that's more aimed at children.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
like something you'd see in Pokemon or something like that.
I feel like by this point, by Monster Hunter World, it has fused with the like realistic settings and the groundedness of the rest of the combat to form this tone that I can only describe as like 1850s pulp biology, like those books that you would read with the guys in the bowler hats who was like, I'm going to bring whiteness to Africa, and they're like and they like run over and like kill a bunch of snakes in the jungle, and like the kind of fiction where sinkholes are a problem,
Right, like the kind of fiction that like inspired Indiana Jones.
Exactly.
Like in adventure serials.
like that, but like nowhere near as self-aware or good as Indiana Jones, where it's just like a guy who's like rescuing people who are brown in bikinis from their own problems or whatever. Some kind of really, really arrogant over. But yeah, it feels like that where everyone's like super happy and like confident in what they're gonna do, but what they're actually doing is just like killing everything around them indiscriminately and turning them into stuff.
I mean, it's good stuff, man.
It's very good stuff.
You know it's sweet stuff.
I mean, I feel like largely you're right. The game wants like its main narrative to be something about like the balance of nature, but it does nothing to reconcile the fact that like I have single-handedly slaughtered like 70 pink Rathians, and like that's gotta do something to the surrounding ecosystem. Because it's like there isn't that much on land space in the new world, right?
Uh-huh.
And pink Rathians are pretty big, I would say. Like, they're large monsters. There probably can't be that many of them there. Like, I've wiped out, like, if we had a starting number, I've probably hit, like, at least 30% of them.
You don't even have to go for Pink Rathian. Like, you fight, like, elder dragons. Like, Xeno'jiva is implied by the narrative to be, like, this totally unique, perfect engine of destruction.
the only one of them.
Yeah, born from the light at the center of the universe or whatever. And you just murder it immediately.
Yeah.
And,
Well, they're like, you have to murder it immediately.
Yeah.
It's the only way we know how to deal with problems.
In the defense of that situation, it does seem like it's super dangerous.
It's true. Even that, though, because we're talking about
it's
monster
kind of
design,
like
kind of.
personified as like a force of destruction that needs to go away.
Yeah.
True.
Well, yeah, it's not even, like, considered, like, a natural thing. It's just,
Yeah.
like, a weird conglomerate of energy, which is, I think, a first for the series. The first time they've been like, this is literally not meat anymore. This is just...
It's an energy monster.
Yeah. Jesus Christ.
Like, all the elder dragons, like, they presumably have young somewhere, but they're all supposed to be these, like, ancient personifications of nature. Like, you know, the Kushladora, or however you're supposed to pronounce that.
Cushy D.
Yeah,
That's
Cushy.
the
Cushy
actual
D.
pronunciation.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, it's good. Straight from the developers. Cushy D.
In memorial
The
of
vape monster.
Cliffy D.
That's Cliffy B.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Cliff Blazinski.
I put the D because he's a dick. Yeah,
because he's a Daora.
God damn it.
From the Connecticut Daoras.
But yes, the Connecticut Daoras, what they do, apparently, is just create these hurricanes wherever they go. They're
Right.
just like natural tornadoes that move. But yeah, so there's lots of creatures in this universe that are themselves engines of destruction that reproduce
For sure, yeah.
themselves. And yet society still seems to be fine, wherever society is. We know there has to be a society elsewhere.
Maybe there just isn't a society. Maybe this is the problem. They're like, we've killed literally thousands of these monsters. We can't set up a fucking tent without one of them stepping on it.
It's kind of like the happiest zombie apocalypse narrative.
Everyone's totally cool. It's like, eventually we're gonna get
Yeah.
there. They just don't, it's all very fatalist.
The planet is so overpopulated with monsters. They've been given this task by like a deity. Like this is how their the apocalypse for the monster race is that there's just a bunch of humans that will descend and just murder them until they're all gone,
Right?
as it was foretold.
Because they don't really have anything as far as like technology goes. They mostly just know how to like make weapons.
They're like fantasy industrial era. Like they could, the technology displayed.
Isn't fantasy industrial era like an actual era that would have existed, like the Bronze Age or something?
No,
that's too modern.
I don't mean like industry in a fantasy setting. I mean like industrial revolution, but with gears 8 times as large as any gear has ever been made on Earth.
Steampunk industrialism.
Not even. I don't know if
it's like a more like. It's less full-on steampunky and more just kind of borrows from that aesthetic.
Yeah. Like there are no trains somehow, despite the feats of engineering way beyond anything trains could ever hope to aspire to.
Right. I'm just like, all I'm doing right now is just imagining like the smithy's like workshop and like, because they have like conveyor belts and shit.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
they have that lift.
Yeah.
That's going on.
Yeah, they could easily they could make like classic iron and brimstone mechs. I feel like if they really wanted to apply themselves to something that wasn't monster murder.
Right.
Yeah.
They also have flying boats.
Oh yeah, they have flying boats. Yeah.
Which they seem. Okay, I realize how far away from your point we're now getting. Please bank it, because I need to be like, hey. Remember how you do a whole quest line in order to make that boat fly, and then they just kind of hang it off a balloon lengthwise, and are just like, this is fine. We just roll with it. This seems cool.
Mm-hmm. It's anchored still. If you turn around in the Coral Highlands, like the main place you start, there's just a huge goddamn anchor.
Right, it's like you slide down. That's how you get to the camp.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what was even the point in the first place when you have like a personal pterodactyl that could just fly you there?
I think they wanted to move the research base to the Rotten Vale, which, as far as I know,
that seems like a bad idea.
True. It also seems like the plot forgot about it because they never do.
Because it gets stopped by the
Legiano.
That's it. Mm-hmm. And then they're just like, oh well, we tried.
You can just walk there.
Yeah.
You have a 70-year-old woman to help you get there. That's fine.
To be fair, Third Fleet seems kind of lazy in general. Mm-hmm, their leader is just like some incense sucker that just like lays on a bunch of huge pillows.
Well, she's like a classic elf lady, where she's super aloof and just doesn't care.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like when people in like Disney movies get turned into animals, I think that the reverse happened to the caterpillar from Alice in Wonderland, and it just became that woman.
Are you implying the caterpillar from Alice in Wonderland is like sexy in an aloof way, but not for you?
No, I think the caterpillar is likes to lay around and smoke hookah, which I think is what has happened here.
Hookah has happened here.
Hookah happened. Anyway, what was your original point?
Oh, that the tone of this game seems like it's pulled directly out of like pulp novels, and how like oblivious it is to its own impact, but then completely happy about it all the time.
Yeah,
that's all.
All right, we will regroup our thoughts here in a minute, and hopefully wait until whatever that hammering is stops. Let's take a break.
Indeed.
All right.
Welcome back from the break. While we were on the break, we were talking about some of the stuff that like we could bring up here, and like continue the discussion. And something kind of came up that we didn't address fully, I think, on the first half, which is this: we made fun of like the bowgun ammo spreadsheet and how weird it is. And the fact that if I wasn't, like, so invested in this series, the amount of, like, ridiculous menuing would probably be a massive turnoff for me. And I'm wondering sort of, I guess, how, Andy, your first experience with it, because the shitty thing about it, like, the shitty truth, is that this is probably the best it's ever been.
Mm-hmm. God, where to even start? I I came into this game like I knew you had played it a bunch, and I've heard other people talk about it. I expected it to be like hard to get into, but it was hard to get into in a different way than I expected. Like I expected it to like be difficult to get into like gameplay wise. I did not anticipate that everything would be buried. Like basically every mechanic is buried under something,
Right?
Like that where you have to like kind of work a little bit to figure it out. Like JJ brought up earlier, like just like you have a room where you can go to like in the hub, and like that's not even like told to you, and it's hard to find. Like, yeah, just like things like that where then
They do start you in it, but like it's easy to forget.
Oh yeah, given like how much stuff is dumped on you to learn. But like every like NPC you talk to with an exclamation point above their head is like tutorial, and it's just like the classic text dump tutorial that's like 3 pages of like a solid wall of text for you to read.
Yeah,
and it's all very overwhelming, and without a friend to help you weed out what you need to care about at any given time, or a wiki or whatever, or a tutorial, it's so off-putting. Yeah. Because like, and there's a lot of stuff like, if I didn't know high rank was a thing already, I probably would have like pissed around in low rank and made like way too much armor and wasted so much time. And like there's all kinds of stuff like that where like you would have no idea what you're supposed to care about right now. Like what's the best thing for you to be doing? Like what's relevant, what you can ignore for now, and what is most important to like beat that monster you're having trouble with, etc., etc.
Yeah.
Like, and you'll be playing the game for like 30 hours, and they'll be like, here's a charm, and you're like, this seems like an important mechanic. It's a defense charm. And it's like, is this important? They didn't give it to me till now. I don't know. I guess I'll put it on. Are there more of these that I can buy from some NPC I haven't met yet? I don't know.
Maybe even the same NPC? No.
Yeah, it's just, yeah. I feel like it's really hard to get into, like, it does not have like a guiding hand which really like puts you through all this stuff in a like a logical progression.
Right.
And I think that's its biggest hurdle.
And just to like drive this point home, I'm the kind of person who wants this game to be about fighting monsters, and shockingly it is mostly not about fighting monsters. It's about like fiddly equipment management and item gathering. And if you want to be as efficient as possible in this game, you go hunt a monster. Then you return to town and you go check your Tail Rider Safari, make sure that they're still going on a thing. You go to the harvest box, make sure that you've got all that stuff managed, reapply a fertilizer, pick up anything that's been collected so far. Mm-hmm. You go check to see if the Argosy is in port, so you can buy stuff from them. You check your wish list, make sure that you've not picked up enough stuff to make a new weapon, new item, new something. Upgrade your weapon, upgrade your armor. Eat a meal, restock your items, then go fight another monster. Like, it's a huge amount of stuff that you can do in between each thing. And that, like, and if you just don't do it, then you aren't playing, like, optimally.
Mm-hmm. You even mentioned a few things there, like the harvest box is a thing that you could totally miss. Like, you might just not talk to that guy, or just do the quest that he gives you, because there's like a million quests. Mm-hmm. And like what are they called? You can send the cats to go.
The Tail Riders.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I did that. I sent them maybe twice. I always forget to go talk to them and send them on a mission or whatever.
Right.
Like, there's so much stuff to keep track of, and stuff that's easy to miss.
And the game has all these menus in place, like an alert system that's like, oh, your tall riders are back, you need to deal with this, and you need to, the box is full, and go back to the people who give you the other missions that are different than the initial missions, but distinguish between the 3 types of missions in the non-specific mission. It's you just get assaulted so much. And it's even worse because they took the time to implement a system in which you're alerted that you need to like walk to a place to deal with this, but couldn't just like drop the stuff in the botany box automatically into your items.
Yeah.
They just couldn't do that. You had to have a separate box and a person you run to go like look and see what it's at, and then just hit the A button a bunch of times. Right. You dump it all in where it's supposed to go. Like, there's so much more room for automation here, and I don't really see what the design is gaining by like forcing you to walk to all these different places. Sometimes even like different maps. Like sometimes you have to go over, because you don't automatically, at least I didn't know automatically, that you could do tall rider stuff from your room.
Right.
So I kept having to like
go back to the research base.
Yeah, like hit like a loading screen in between when you're just dicking around trying to manage your essentially like this estate that you're trying to fiddle around with to get this industry up and working. And granted, it does feel like an industry, and so I suppose that's a benefit. But like, it's not what I'm here for. Like this, it's almost like it's almost like an MMO to me in a lot of ways. This game is very MMO-ish. It has that same scent to me. But instead of trying to like fiddle around and sell things that you found to human beings, you're fiddling around with NPCs to try and optimize your like income gain.
Yeah, my like comparison was that it was like Shadow of the Colossus, but every time that you rode aggro, you instead played a game of Sim City. You're like, I fought a big monster. Now I have to make sure that like there's water running to my municipalities. And then I fight another monster.
Yeah. And instead of deep, compelling drama, you have Meowster cats that I don't know, want to
right.
fucking give you radishes.
I feel like the fix that the game needs is to like just give you everything that you can do at once, and then walk you through like, okay, you've come back from a hunt. Here's the things you want to do.
Here's your checklist.
Check the botanical research. Check the whatever. Check this.
Talk to the ecology guy.
It's like walk you through like, here's the important things that you should do in between hunts.
Yeah. It's just even that would end up getting buried in a tutorial somewhere. Like,
but like
there needs a lot of streamlining.
True. But like even if they wanted to keep it at least somewhat like it is now, they need like a much more like hand-holdy tutorial. And like I don't know, like that sounds awful, but it would be worth it.
Yeah.
Because you would actually like know what the fuck you were doing. Like it's better than what's in place now.
Yeah. And not only that, but like, and I've done a lot of thinking because the game has given me a lot of time to think about it. But the fact that you start after coming back from a hunt, you start each day in the trade yard means that in order to successfully go on another hunt, you have to run to a lift to go to the canteen, which I think is there to like buffer loading times, so you don't have to like wait for the quest to load. You're doing something like you're running up to the canteen to get a meal, but still fuck that. Like it's so much like I would much rather put the controller down and wait for the load than have to run up to the thing. It's just like another thing to have to deal with.
I'm on the opposite page on that. I like I think it's more immersive personally to have to like have a hub that you actually like walk around and do shit.
Well, I never even do that because like
you take the lift. I always run up the stairs. Like
I will take a lift laterally in a way that makes no sense, like physically. I'm like, I'm gonna go from the workshop to the canteen. I'll get on this train.
Yeah, I like that kind of stuff.
Right.
So
anything to make the time, and like, there's no reason to ever be in the gathering hall. Like, and interact with other people.
Useless when we messed around in it.
Yeah, they have like an event going on right now, but like I ran the event like 30 times yesterday, and the whole time, all of the stuff that we were just talking about that you have to do between hunts, I was just letting rot, basically. Like, I was like, I'm not picking stuff up, not talking to people, because I just want to get back into the quest. If we just had, like, a thing, if it was one thing that would just automatically dump shit into your box, that wouldn't be a problem.
Yeah, it feels like there should be some kind of, like, mode that you can turn on where you're like, I just want to do like a string of 10 hunts right now.
Right.
Or like something like that you could do once you got to like a certain rank or something. Like you could do multiple in a row.
Yeah.
Do we want to talk about the story now?
Yeah. I also want to mention my favorite thing about this game. Speaking of, I guess, like, tail riders, maybe would be the segue point. I'm not sure. I love that Andy loves the Palicos.
You love the Palicos?
Yeah, they're great. How could you not? Like, we talked about, like, how the tone is, like, unexpected. To me, like, the Palicos are, like, the epitome of that.
Exactly.
Like, but, like, in the best way. Like, you just have, like, an anthropomorphic cat friend that, like, comes along with you and is basically, like, your squire or whatever, however you want to say it. Yeah. He just, like, helps you fight. You can put him in, like, cool armor. And, like, the best
He's
thing...
your golf caddy.
Yeah, he's like your golf caddy.
Caddy.
Yeah. But, like, the best thing is that whenever you go through water, they have these little rafts. That is, like, they didn't need to do that. That's such, like, the best little touch. It's the master stroke on the Palicos. But, yeah, they're just, like, so delightful in a completely unexpected way.
Yeah.
Okay, I will admit I also like the Palicos, and they are emblematic of the tone. And probably my favorite thing about them is that the highest tier Palico armor you can get is like a beautiful wedding dress. So that no matter like how cool and badass your main character man is, you have to, your like squire has to be this like demon corpse bride cat princess that runs around, sprinkles fairy dust on you, and puts things to sleep.
I prioritize looks over anything else for the Palico. I prioritize making myself look as stupid as possible. But the Palico armor that I use is the Valhazak one, which has like a transparent chest, so that you just see their spine. It's like really, it's pretty cool. And I don't use the Valhazak weapon. I use the scythe.
I also use the armor I think looks coolest, which is the Legiana armor, because it looks like cool anime Kingdom Hearts Keyblade armor. Yeah.
That is actually true, come to think of it.
Yeah.
Oh, well. Speaking of armor, before we get into larger story discussions, which are certainly going to take a good bit chunk of time, I think mechanically speaking, the armor system in this game is one of the few areas where I feel like at its mechanical core, not just its obscurity in accessing it, like all the menu problems we were discussing it.
Yeah.
I feel like there is a problem with the armor skill systems in the game. I feel like, specifically, I think the 14 different games that are within Monster Hunter World,
or more,
and how all of them have to be tied to this armor like loot progression system, forces the existence of just of so many different skills and variables, because there has to be so many different things that can be desirable to the 14 different playstyles, that it's almost impossible to like make informed decisions about the kind of armor you're wearing as a casual player. Like, you have to sit down every time. It's like an hour process or more to just like pick your next goal in the armor tree if you want to make an informed decision about it, because there are just that many skills you have to make as a trade-off, and that there's just so much that you have to think about with armor skills that it overwhelms even people who I feel like are really willing to dive into it and try and engage.
I feel like this is an area where maybe my opinion is irrelevant because of how much of this game that I've played.
Yeah.
But also that I disagree with you pretty much like on base value, just like completely.
Okay.
I think that the armor skill system in this game is vastly improved over the previous games, where everything had like skill points, but you had to reach a certain threshold for the skill to activate.
Yeah.
Meaning that I was running around in like the highest tier of play, and there were still people who didn't have armor skills activated because they assumed it works the way that it works in this game, which is how assumptions function. This is a good design because it operates in the way that people expect it to. So yes, min-maxing and making builds that are specifically for a weapon tend to have you sort of want to experiment with stuff and figure out like what are the optimal skills, but just having like good stuff skills, things like attack boost, weakness exploit, critical eye, critical boost, those kind of things,
Right.
totally viable on every weapon, bar none. And you get the weapons, the skills, just by having a piece of armor with that skill on it.
Right.
And then you can stack them and stuff, and that's fine. And then they even made it easier than ever before to, barring third-party applications, shout-outs to Athena's ass.
It's a real thing. He did not make that up to force japes. I remember using Athena's ass when I played 4U.
Yeah, it's super convenient.
It
and
was
a great piece of software.
Yeah, it was necessary software to play the video game.
In this game, you literally click a stick and go to skills and look for the one you want. And then it just shows you.
But that's what you're taking for granted. Look for the one that you want. There's like 5 pages of skills that are like
more.
like even in the list that you provided of like basic skills that are good with any weapon, you listed weakness exploit, critical eye, critical boost up, which
Yeah.
I feel like are all things that are so close to one another thematically, not thematically, they're so close to each other mechanically that they should just be cut. Like, I just want this game to have like half to a third of the number of skills that are present.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still fine with skills having huge diversity in their kind of effects. Like, I think my favorite example of that is I think the inclusion of like evade distance up is like one of my favorite skills in the
Evade
game.
extender is my favorite skill, period. Like, I don't know why. I only use it on 2 weapons, but I love it. Like, I love evade extender because it's just like, let's just dive 1,000 feet.
Right. I just want, like, the existence of this game having attack boost up, agitator, your damage is up when your health is full, your damage is up when your stamina is full. Like, that all feels like it's just increasing the intellectual burden needed for people to make informed decisions about what they want their armor set to be, which is supposed to be like part of the core loop of the game. Is you could look at a piece of armor and go like, oh man, I want that. But if you're making that decision based on what the armor does for you instead of like the cool looking gold effects that are on the side of it, it's like an hour process to make that decision. And if they just cut the skills down and had sort of a little bit more restraint there, I feel like the loop would be way smoother.
I think that the reason that there's so many armor skills in the game has to do with the fact that there are so many monsters and different types of material. So you don't want to have a monster that doesn't have an armor set.
Right.
Because that would be bad. People would complain about it.
Right.
And it allows, the designers to have a little bit of fun, have like a cool looking armor set that matches whatever monster it is.
Yeah.
In 2 versions, in 2 different genders. So everything is like crafted like specifically for each monster like that 4 times. And you want to differentiate the skills from in those enough to give them all their own sort of flavor. You want your Odogaron armor to, feel like you're really embodying that monster, and so they give it the skills that are necessary. I think I agree with you at least in some ways, because things like Agitator are just there as like a callback to Challenger, which was a big popular skill in the previous games that did essentially the same thing. Maximum Might and that one. Exactly the point that you're making.
Yeah.
Really, peak performance, that's what it is. Are like both things that just do like a weird thing that require basically full investment in only one of them. Like, you're not going to mix the 2.
Oh yeah, and that's what I actually like. I think the space for skills like, for example, Agitator, that does kind of a weird conditional factor that you've got to keep in mind that's similar to other skills like Attack Up in terms of its primary function. I think those should be tied to like the set bonuses. Like, I'm fine with skills like that existing when, again, you're trying to, like, I'm the Odogaron armor, so I get a weird skill that feels like I'm being an Odogaron. Like, that's where I think that belongs, and I think that's cool as the game giving you some incentive to not look like an ugliest, hideous person. You can be hideous if you want. Nothing wrong with that.
I love being hideous.
I want there to be some reason to not be hideous,
Right.
Just some little carrot at the end of that stick.
I mean, even they really should if they wanted to incentivize not being hideous, which I think they did try with the set bonuses, I feel like they should have made the requirements a little bit steeper, because did you see that horrible garbage I was wearing when you showed up?
Yes.
That had a set bonus attached to it, because Rathalos armor only needs 2 pieces, and there are 4 different sets of Rathalos armor that all count toward the same thing.
Yeah.
So it's like, I guess I can just look like a jackass and be totally fine with it.
True.
Yeah, I don't know. I like the skill system better personally. I feel like if you played like World of Warcraft, they used to have like a big intimidating skill tree. They wanted to appeal to more people, so they shrunk it way, way down. I think, whereas like a lot of people hate that, myself included, because it makes like the individuality of your build a lot worse at the expense of like accessibility. Monster Hunter is inaccessible as always, but it allows you to sort of like put in more little like free skills, and I like that.
I feel like my opinion on this is irrelevant because I already don't like these kinds of these kind of systems in RPGs where there's like dozens of skills, and in order to like craft some armor, you feel like you're preparing for a test. I hate that kind of stuff.
I remember when you were in low rank, and I was like, "Yo, let me see your armor skills," and you were like, "My what?" I was like, open the equipment. I was like, "No, get rid of this. Get that shitty."
I was just like making the armor that had like the highest defense or whatever.
Right. Well, that's another thing. Like, people coming from other RPGs are not going to understand the importance of the armor system in the way that it's meant to be.
Yeah. I just ended up Googling like high rank switch axe armor that's good. Yeah. You know, like, and then just made what the person said. Well, and it was all good. It all worked out.
This is what I was talking about, you know? Like, when at the beginning of this podcast, when I shouted out the people online who've helped me get to an understanding of this game, to the point where I feel comfortable making my own sets to do wacky things, like stun focused switch axe builds and shit like that. It's because I was just like Googling around and like, oh, this is a cool thing, found this. I think this game just like embraces that to some extent, and I feel like you almost need internet access to play this game, both for the multiplayer and so that you know what the fuck you're doing some of the time. Or you need a friend like Chad, who is basically a prima strategy guide for Monster Hunter.
I want to talk about that story.
Yeah, sure.
I guess.
It sucks. Thanks for listening to NOCLIP.
Yeah, it's not very good.
Someone needs to refresh me on what happens in this game.
Basically, Zora Magdaros is a thing. You gotta find it and get it to leave. Then it's like, oh no, mysterious crystal energy. Then you gotta find the mysterious crystal dragon and kill it.
Make him leave.
That's the story.
This isn't Monster Hunter World, it is Monster Landlord World.
And there's the theming of like, oh, we're exploring the new world, but they don't really lean into that very much.
Not really, no. The handler likes to talk about eating things a lot.
Yeah. That's about it.
Yeah.
More than lots and lots of other games that I've played, I straight up don't think that this game needs characters. Like, literally any characters at all.
What about the easygoing Fiverr?
Fiverr Bro.
Fiverr Bro.
Everybody's favorite canteen patron.
There's like a signed photograph of him on the wall. His signature literally just says Fiverr Bro.
That would be the best thing they could put in the game.
Yeah. I need to get like a higher end screenshot of Fiverr Bro and then frame it.
Yeah, put it like right behind the Meowster chef. Like on the wall.
Oh god.
So it doesn't need characters, even though you're objectively wrong because of Fiverr Bro. But,
So yeah, the reason that I believe this is because this game, the actual gameplay of it, maps so perfectly to like the classic old style of I go out into the wilderness, I kill the thing that wants to kill me, and I bring back loot. Like, I don't need any motivation beyond the cool armors and swords and shit that I make out of the bones of the creatures before me.
Right.
I need nothing else. Like I just kept remembering in like the second Zora Magdaros fight where there's just like the fucking old guy who's just like shouting to you on your, I don't know, implied intercom earpiece that exists in the Monster Hunter universe where he's just like, you gotta kill it, all is lost.
He's got a megaphone.
Yeah. I think that's actually what it's supposed to be, is they're just like yelling through a megaphone or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like
I don't think
kind
there's
of
like a
horn.
codec or anything.
There's no codec?
Yeah.
Damn it. Alright, I thought it was like just a cool cast iron gear thing that you put over
They have the
side.
Binocucom from Sly Cooper.
Oh god. But like that, they keep shouting shit like that, and they keep trying to set up circumstances like that where like there's this huge everything is riding on the murder of the thing, and the game is so
You're just like, I'm just here to get a few more scales.
yeah, but like not even like as like a 9 to 5 gotta clock in, get my scales. Like I meant it from the perspective of like the game's already has so much levity and happiness, like just plastered all over the place with the palicoes. Just like let the game be it's the happy fantasy that it clearly wants to be, where you just like go out and get your loot and come home and loot for looting's sake, because
Right.
that's clearly what you're here for, even in the narrative. Like the whole reason everyone cares about the Elder Crossing is that they're like, oh, we can learn more about the monsters so we can not house them. I mean, actually steal them and take their bones.
Take the innards.
Yeah. Like the bones are what you're here for, and bones are good enough for me. This game just straight up does not need me like these elongated inter-character monologues where they're like speculating about why Zora might have come through over the ocean. Like I don't care about the motivations of a mountain. Like, why? Like it's an animal. None of these things have like even implied intelligence. They're just beasts that try and murder you because you're around.
Some of them have implied intelligence, but that is just an exacerbation of the exact point that you're making, is that not only do I not care, I don't want it to I don't like it being there adds nothing to the experience. And in fact, in the case of things like Zora Magdaros, which is exactly like a perfect one-to-one mapping of every fucking instance of this same stupid quest that's existed since the beginning of the franchise, it's a boring, stupid quest that you just go through to get to the next thing. Like, maybe the first time that you shoot a cannon at him is cool, but the 9th time that you shoot a cannon at him is boring, and then by the 30th time you shoot a cannon at him, he might actually be dead, and then you have to do the quest 4 or 5 more times if you want to make any of this stuff.
Yeah.
That's why I've just ignored Zora Magdaros armor. It's why I've ignored pretty much anything that Darren and Morin would have provided. And, Jen Morin, Lao Shang, all that shit basically can be forgotten. Because it is just shooting cannons, which is uninteractive and boring, at a giant thing that reacts slowly.
I feel like most people probably feel the way that you guys do. But I kind of come down on the other side of it. Like, not super strongly,
Right.
but, like, because I also don't really care about the story at all.
Yeah.
And I mash X through all the dialogue. I don't read any of it. But, like, I like there to be some kind of, like, context for what I'm doing. Like, for me, the game benefits from having a story. Maybe it's too long. Maybe it's a bit too intrusive. But, like, overall, I like that it's there, and it did keep me going through.
I actually, because that actually isn't really where I wanted to land on this. I agree with you mostly, actually. I like the fact there's context. I like the fact that they're characters, but not because of the role they play in, like, the narrative of the game. I like the fact that they're people walking around in the city and making it feel like a place.
Yeah, like, I straight up probably just wouldn't like this game at all if it was just mechanics.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
the addition, however badly it's implemented, what it adds for there being a story and characters and context for stuff, like, just makes it better for me.
When I said I don't want characters, I don't mean I don't want other human bodies.
Right.
The existence of Fiverr Bro is like an extreme upswing.
Yeah.
But Fiverr Bro, for all that he is clearly not a character. He doesn't have a name. He just like wants food and to force his responsibilities onto you, and nothing ever changes about his life. He's static, and I wish everyone else was static instead of the like implied drama. Like,
I was gonna call it, because obviously the Fiverr Bro thing is great and we should keep making jokes about it.
yes, yeah.
But I was gonna call out the fact that like they have Matt Mercer, who at this point is probably more expensive than he was a couple of years ago.
True.
Who plays like a character in this game, in a game with a story that doesn't matter, and they know it doesn't matter. And they're pretty self-aware about it for the most part. And just like turning in just like a totally passable performance, and like the existence of him in the game and like other voice actors doing other voice acting stuff is fine, but like the fact that it comes up so often is just like actually just detracts more than it should. Like I feel like the only time it was really annoying was during the Pinkrathian find the footprints thing, because the handler would actually talk to you in between every mission.
Yeah.
Other than that, A+.
I remember
A+ don't care.
That sums it up.
Yeah.
My head was really just like in my hands by the time we got to high rank and they introduced that Goku guy.
That guy.
Yeah.
He had such like a... You're talking like the old guy with the...
Yeah, the cooler older guy.
buff old guy.
To be a substitute for your cool old guy who already
his
existed.
like introduction felt like it was such a thing that I thought he was like a character from a previous game. Like that's how much they played him up.
Like, if any of the characters in this game were characters in other games, I wouldn't even know. Like, unless they, like, literally brought back, like, the Guild Marm, who I had to talk to, like, a minute. The same way if they brought back the Handler in a future game, you would just know because you dealt with them so much. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe the Meowster chef is the same.
Gotta love the Meowster chef.
No, he's not, because the other ones I think were just regular. I don't know. I don't even remember the food guy in For You, which is crazy because you literally would talk to them every single time that you went on a hunt. Stupid.
Good fucking food animation, though.
Oh, yeah, dude. Like, by the time you get to the end, like, when you fully upgraded the kitchen, it, like, starts with him, like, cutting the steak in, like, what had to have been, like, they just went to, like, the top all-time posts on Oddly Satisfying and just, like, checked boxes. They were, like, a knife going through meat, like, smoothly, and then it kind of, like, sort of, flops down, and they cut it up and slide. Yeah, it's, like, it was weird. It's like visual ASMR. I still skipped it though.
Slight tangent, but have you guys noticed that in the jump from I forget the console generation numbers all the time, from the most recent generation with like the PS4 and Xbox One and all that, from the prior generation of the 3 and of the 360, how like the only true graphical update that in my mind has really like popped and made itself like unbelievably like this is truly a revolution from where we were before visually is food.
It comes to, I think it's texturing is what has gotten better.
Food is so beautiful now.
Yeah.
I thought
that's kind of a thing that has like a history in like animation. If you ever, like, I remember watching like The Lion King as a kid, and there's the sequence where they're teaching Simba how to eat bugs, and I'm like, dude, I kind of want to eat bugs now because they made all of those look so good.
Yeah.
But there wasn't a glisten before, and now, like, because I remember the first time I noticed this was the most food-centric of games, Final Fantasy
Cooking
15.
In Final Fantasy 15, they actually use like really high-resolution pictures of actual food as the textures.
Oh.
Yeah, that's why
shit.
it looks so good in that game.
Oh. No wonder that game always made me want to eat instead of play the game.
It's a real picture of cup noodles.
That's also a real advertisement for cup noodles. I was gonna say that would be super weird if that just happened in more games. Monster Hunter has like advertisements also in it, which is kind of strange, but it's always just for like another game.
I'll admit one thing that I do want, just because I wish it had the like reflection of the same way you interact with crafters like at the armor set, is that I wish when you'd sat down at the canteen and ordered food at the Meowster stuff, that it played the same animation of like cooking the food every single time, like with the meat and the stew and all that.
Yeah.
But I wish that the item that you get would change based on what you ordered. So I wish they'd like go through all of that and then just like on the counter slide over a cup noodles at the end.
You're like eating and then like somebody slides you just like an ice cold Coca-Cola.
It's like they put the platter in front of you and your character just sits there. And then it slides in and they catch it.
Yeah.
And they're like,
The other cat opens the platter, there's just nothing on it. Order cup noodles, health plus 50, stamina plus 50, attack up large, defense up large.
they get out like the huge platter and they lift the thing and there's just a cup of noodles.
There's like an extended eating animation that takes 4 minutes and like shows your hunter just really enjoying the cup noodle.
They should add in the cup noodle hat. For Final Fantasy 15.
They could totally do that.
They could. It'd be...
Do a Final Fantasy 15 / cup noodle crossover with Monster Hunter.
I mean, Universal Studios does crossovers with them all the time, so...
Wait, what?
Yeah, Universal Studios Japan is like a partner with Capcom, and so they get their own shit all the time.
Oh.
Particularly in Japan, but it will eventually come west, I'm sure.
Yeah. Now that it's the best-selling game in Capcom's history.
Yeah, I would not be surprised if we didn't have, or I would be surprised if we didn't have, like, American studios trying to do the same thing.
Yeah.
Like, they might get some kind of offer to be like, fucking Blue Bloods, get your Tom Selleck mustache, sponsored piece of headgear. It's like, just puts a mustache on, your investigation goes up or something like
So one thing I found while I was like doing a little bit of research on the game was there are really divisive feelings among people about the handler.
Yeah.
And I was wondering what you guys thought.
Divisive on what
like,
avenue?
some people like hate her fucking guts and want her to not exist at all. And other people really like she's like waifu bait and some people took it.
She's hideous.
Oh, that wasn't the reaction I was expecting. I'm sorry. What?
The first, like, literally, this is
She's
one of the
got
most...
an uncanny valley face like all the people in the game do.
To some extent. It's even worse with her because, and I noted this from the first time I watched any of the cutscenes, lots of characters, including her, have this, like, terrifying eye bag situation where, underneath their eyes is, like, a horrible, terrible, different color than the rest of their flesh. For most characters, it's just, like, pink. It's just, like, a pink crescent flesh piece that's underneath all of their eyes. But for her, it's, like, purple, like she's just been punched in both eyes, one after the other, repeatly.
So, see, this is what I'm talking about. People have really strong feelings.
Clearly. I obviously don't pay enough attention to the, character models in this game, because, like, I would have never noticed that. I think the handler is great, specifically and exclusively because she serves exactly the same purpose as the guild marm, but it isn't overtly sexual and weird.
Oh, good thing I don't know what marm means. Is marm some kind of term?
I think it's like it refers... I don't know, I'll look it up. It is a specific term, yes.
Okay, all right. In the meantime, while we are doing our NOCLIP fact check on the term marm, to be clear...
It's literally a variant spelling of ma'am. Oh. So it's the guild ma'am. It's a woman who works for the guild.
That makes sense. I do not think that the handler is like any worse than any of the other characters.
Okay, fair.
The actual worst character in this game, who's thankfully downplayed very heavily, but included in like the first and final cutscenes of the game inexplicably as if he is a focus, is like orange-haired cool friend.
Oh, that guy.
Yeah.
Oh,
What a weird inclusion.
Yeah, like douche
he
assistant.
he never does anything.
Fiber douche.
Never. Yeah.
Fiber dude.
I like to sit around at the canteen and talk shit on him with Fiber, bro.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. Yeah, he's the actual worst character. But yeah, I don't she was assigned to me. I don't know. I
Right.
could skip through her dialogue, and because none of these characters need to be around, so I didn't treat them like people.
Right.
I don't.
Yeah, honestly, I mean, if anything, I avoided the handler most of the time because she would have dialogue before getting to the quest menu. So I would just go to a board. Like, if you're a character that I would rather interact with a lifeless board than you probably aren't serving too much of a purpose.
Yeah. I feel kind of the same about her as I do about the story. Whereas, like, I appreciate her inclusion because I like the idea of, like, a companion character. Like, I like the Palicos.
Right.
People tend to really hate those because, like, when they're done wrong, they can be really fucking annoying. But I like her inclusion overall.
I also think that, yeah, I like the fact that she's, like, at camp.
Yeah.
Like, you show up and she's like, oh, you died.
Whoops.
Have a steak.
Yeah.
I think all that's fine. She serves well as a like excuse for tutorials. Mm-hmm. I think all that works.
Yeah,
out.
I mean, she can be a bit annoying in the story. 'Cause she's like, I'm going to come with you, and then I'm going to be in mortal danger, and it's going to cause problems for you. But, whatever.
Yeah, it happens all the time,
Yeah, who
and she's actually
cares?
more capable than most of those characters. So.
Yeah.
I'm actually infinitely more interested in her character and the discussions around it since I've apparently now just learned that she's considered waifu bait, which like blows my mind.
she's
She fits
just
like none of those stereotypes.
She's just like a cute girl who follows you around and like is basically like your helper, like your servant.
Right. Talks about how cool you are.
If by cute,
And
you
then
mean like
they put her in like cute little outfits for like the whatchamacallit festival, the spring
event.
blossom
Yeah,
festival.
I guess they
she
do
had
put
like
her.
the bee outfit.
She does have a bee costume. I didn't consider that. It's just her normal outfit kind of looks like a mummy who works at a library. So I never really.
A mummy?
Again, the dead eyes. No one seems to really be.
okay.
Yeah, no, I'm not on board with this dead eye thing.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just very odd to me. If they were trying to make her fit that trope, I guess they did a good job restraining those stereotypes very,
I feel
very
like
heavily.
I don't think she's like supposed to be leaning into like the hot anime babe like trope. Obviously, it's more like she's like like a Velma, where she's like the nerdy, like not kind of good looking, but like not super hot. But you're okay. You know? You realize later when you think about it, like, okay, she's not bad.
I thought the entire appeal of Velma was the sweater, though.
The
thought it
the
was the
mini
glasses.
skirt is the appeal.
Oh, no, you're
not
right.
the sweater.
You're right.
I think that would make sense considering
And the
that
high
like
she's in heels, I think.
Oh, I guess everyone was.
It's an older show.
Every woman
Yeah.
was in heels in the
Yeah.
50s.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
It makes sense because Scooby-Doo was like the first Monster Hunter.
That's true.
Yeah.
Fair.
Before we get onto the whole Scooby-Doo thing, we were kind of talking about like the story and how the story takes a long fucking time to like progress and get to a point.
Yeah.
I feel like because the structure of this game requires you to sort of, we'll put farm in quotes, but we will not be the first people to talk about how Monster Hunter isn't really like farming so much as it is the main loop of the game.
Yeah.
But I feel like the story has this thing where you want to keep moving through it for like make progression, and it drives you and puts an objective on the screen all the time, but you still want to like stop and go back and do stuff. So I think that's going to like the way that you handle moving through the plot is going to sort of drive your answer to this question. But as far as this game's like difficulty goes, did you guys hit like walls? Were there things that you thought were just very hard or things that were too easy? Anything like that?
I lost a quest twice, which I think means that it's like exactly where it needs to be, because I died plenty of times.
Yeah.
but I almost never died 3 times in a row, and that seems to be about perfectly where it needs to be in my mind. I had the 2 times I died. I died hilariously not the first time I fought it, but like one of the repeat times I died against Xenojiva, and I died against Kieran the first time I fought it in this game. And the Kieran death actually I feel like was a good thing in some ways, since it was the first Elder Dragon you encounter, even though you don't know it by that name at that point.
Was that low rank Kieran?
Yeah, it was low rank Kieran.
I missed the quest for that and like played it when I was like HR 60 or something. I was like, oh.
I also missed it and didn't play it till just yesterday.
Yeah.
I always did every quest before moving on to the next thing, which so the story got really spaced out for me in a way that made it more bearable and easier to ignore. But yeah, it made the Kieran seem like a more dramatic fight because like I had, I was Act 3, I'd already lost at some point, stakes were raised.
Yeah.
So I never really hit anything that I thought was a straight wall. Which is good, and I know an improvement from the other games, because the reason that I quit For You was Devil Joe. I just could not beat Devil Joe, and then just sat the game down and did other things.
Yeah. My wall in For You was Brachydias, and now, like, at this point, I just want him back. Like, I want Brachydias back in this game. A lot of people have talked about this game being a little bit too easy for people who are, like, veterans of the series. But I don't think Monster Hunter is a game that needs to be really difficult. I think Monster Hunter just needs to be fun to play. Because there's, in my eyes, there are, like, 2 ways to fail a quest in Monster Hunter. The first one is like an out-and-out crazy battle where you probably have multiple people and then something bad happens and, like, people die and you're like, oh, God, what a catastrophe. And it's, like, this big, like, social thing.
Yeah.
And then there's the other one that I think is what drives your personal progression when it happens to you, which is where you go in and you start fighting a monster and you just feel like you're totally outclassed and you get, like, just beaten down. And you go, what am I doing wrong? Do I not have, like, equipment that's up to fighting this guy? Do I need to prepare? Do I just need to learn him? And then once you sort of do all that, you get this, like, nice triumphant moment when you beat it. And I feel like those are that's like a good difficulty. And that's where I felt like Nergigante was. Mm-hmm. I thought that he, like, the first time I fought him, he just, like, made me into, like, a kind of a fine powder on the ground. And then, like, 2 or 3 attempts is probably the maximum any quest really took me, except for the 2 Templar Basil Juice. Because fuck that quest. Also, I was using the hammer at the time.
I'm
really hard to fight that guy with a hammer. Mm-hmm. And so, I don't know. I thought the difficulty was okay going through, but I also fucked around a lot during the story, which I think makes it easier.
Yeah. For me, it was early game stuff. Like, I got this game when it came out. Played up to the first time you fight the electric flying squirrel guy. What's his name?
Toby Kadachi.
Yeah, Toby Kadachi. Totally handed me my ass. Like, I was still using the charge blade, and it was like I hit a wall pretty hard there. Where I was like, maybe I'm not a Monster Hunter kind of guy.
Right.
And then I came back to it for the podcast, and I switched weapons and did some other shit, and was able to beat him like not without that much trouble.
Right.
I don't know what I was doing before. I guess I suck real bad with the charge blade.
It's
but
not
like,
hard to do.
After that, like, I felt like the multiplayer aspect, like, alleviates a lot of the difficulty, because I never really had that much trouble, even with, like, later game stuff, because I could just, like, bring in 3 other dudes.
They all just kind of, like, go to town.
I imagine I would have had, like, a really rough time with this if I played it all by myself.
Right. There are some people who make the argument that things are easier solo, and I feel like it takes a very specific kind of person for that to be true. In the example of JJ, I feel like he would probably have an easier time for a couple of reasons. One, because you use the longsword. Mm-hmm. I feel like the longsword functions best in, like, a dual type situation.
You are completely correct, and I actually like longsword less when I'm playing with help than when I'm not.
Right. And then the other reason is just generally your general demeanor also. I feel like you would have a willingness to sort of like learn something and go at it more like mano a mano.
Oh yeah,
than
absolutely.
most people, whereas I want to do the spinny attack in the air and smash the guy. And then be
certain
like,
monsters just seem like they would be a nightmare to fight by yourself.
Like what?
Like I was playing before you got here. I was doing a bunch of the optional quests that I neglected, and one of them was like I had to fight an Azure Rathalos, and it's just like super aggressive. I was doing them by myself because they were lower rank than what I was, but like goddamn was it annoying to fight that thing. Like, even when I was higher rank than it. Like, It was just, like, a headache, because it's jumping around everywhere.
And flying all
flying
over the
over
place,
here.
shooting stupid fireballs.
Like, it jumps around so much. Its AI, like, wigs out.
It is kind of a freak like that.
It's like, better not run out of flash pods.
Yeah.
Like I did.
That thing's actually the reason that I ended up... It's what prompted me to try and pick a different ranged weapon, because I was like, I don't want to have to deal with this with a sword. I want to be able to, instead of just flash pod it constantly and like have to go between a state where I'm in a fight that's way too hard or not a fight and it's on the ground flapping about.
Right.
I wanted to be able to like have a gun.
Yeah, that is, they made flash pods way too effective in this game, because they are functional on literally... Well, not literally, but for the most part, they're functional on like every monster, and they're way easier to aim than they ever were in the 3DS games.
Yeah.
That's something that we didn't talk about that I probably won't want to, but the fact that they made the switch to the standard first-person shooter controls of using left trigger and right trigger to actually aim and shoot stuff is a pretty big deal. For how effective like bombs are, because in the other games you just had to like kind of look in the direction you wanted to throw them and then press a button and you would like chuck them, and there you had to like know what the distance was, and now you just kind of like go bop, and then the Rathalos falls down, you smash his head in with a hammer and you collect your rewards. It's really easy, but occasionally you have to bring some bugs with you. That's it. But yeah, I don't know how they would go about fixing that other than make the thing not fucking fly around all the time.
Yeah, that's just more openings, because openings are what make this game fun, because you have to choose the time to commit. And it's okay to get... Azure Rathalos kind of acts like it's enraged all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I liked Silver Wrath so much better than Azure, because Silver wasn't like a spastic Rathalos. It was just like a tougher Rathalos.
What is Silver Rathalos?
In the older games, the
okay.
G-rank variant of Rathalos was silver. There's also a gold Rathian.
Okay.
That was the step above pink. Come at me. I got the knowledge.
I love how you structure knowledge and information as if it's a competition and people need to assault you or attack you to prove your knowledge.
I'm the king of knowledge, and if anybody wants to take my throne, come at me.
I would say that's an Adventure Time character, but that show is ending, so
the king of the Andes.
no more new characters.
One thing that we kind of sort of scratched at a bit earlier on was I wanted to talk about like the theming of the game, where like all the monsters basically like themed or like dinosaurs.
Yeah.
Like everything in the game, even if it's not like something as specific as like the Anjanath is a T-Rex, they're like...
He's a T-Rex with a cool nose.
Right, yeah. You have things like the... what's it called? The Tiziyaku, the one that picks up the eggs.
The Kuluyaku.
Kuluyaku, that one, who is like basically like a cross between like a flamingo and a raptor. Like you have a lot of like, and it looks like surprisingly natural and like almost like it could be a real thing.
Yeah,
you know, like a lot of the designs, I think that theming is really great.
Yeah, one of the things that people love to talk about in the Monster Hunter series, and with good reason, this isn't like dismissive of it, is the fact that they do a really good job of making the monster like ecology makes sense. They put things in places that make sense for them to be in, and they have them do things that seem largely natural, like an actual animal would do, just like scaled way up and given crazy like fire breath and shit.
Yeah.
They're staunch adherence to the like less than cartoony style that this game has, I think, really hinders the amount of crazy nonsense that they can do. But I feel like they've been given, like, it's just enough wiggle room to mean that there's enough variety that I still love the designs. But just, like, we're missing some, like, weird thing that I don't really care about.
Yeah, because I think I was watching you play the beginning of Monster Hunter Tri, or whichever one's on the Wii U.
Oh, 3U, yeah.
3U or whatever. And you were fighting something that was just like basically like a cartoon ape that looked like stupid and out of place.
Right.
And I'm glad that this game has that kind of focus on a specific theme that gives it this cohesion where that leads to just like a bunch of less but like really great, higher quality designs overall.
Yeah. I feel like for every Brachydios that we lost, which was like a 90s kid's doodle that came to life and shot gack all over the place, is like we also lost something like the Congalala, which is like the shittiest, literally and figuratively, ha 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 ha, fart jokes, monster that ever existed, and I hated. And so, yeah, I'm super happy to see things that are like, I would rather the monsters be a serious threat and look cool and look like a thing that is threatening than a joke or just like some off-the-wall nonsense thing. I like variety, but I don't like it enough to like completely ruin something I'm going to have to fight a million times.
Yeah, and they could always add in more stuff, like I assume they're going to, since this game
They still are.
like extremely well. So
Yeah, we've gotten 2 new monsters so far.
And turns out, applying a constraint to yourself of make this look like it could be believable in some kind of fantasy biology isn't actually that much of a constraint because real life biology is ridiculously diverse.
This is true, yeah.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know, it's the game design structure of it is the part that makes it, because like you can take something that looks like crazy. I guess they do this with the small monsters a little bit. Like you'll get something that's like some wacky, like the, what are they called, like the grandfather mandragora, I don't know, the big bugs that fly around the Coral Highlands.
Yeah.
Like that's like kind of based on a real thing and scaled way up to be like a Monster Hunter fantasy thing, and is really cool. But like they couldn't do that with like, they couldn't take that same thing and make it 4 stories tall, and like it would just be weird.
yeah. We aren't going to be fighting like a giant wiggler or anything.
That is until PvP comes in and everybody wears the wiggler out.
God. Speaking of how well the game is able to work with its biological constraints to still make cool, diverse monsters, they worked under those same constraints in the environment in a way that actually blew me away, IGN.com. There are multiple times when I was playing this game when I just like looked a direction while I was running through doing whatever, tedious bullshit the game wants you to do with like harvesting stuff,
right,
where I just like stopped and then just like turned to my left and just like set the controller down for a little bit and then just went and got some tea and then just like had some tea and then continued playing the video game. The game has just like straight up actual gorgeous vistas that aren't like cutscene vistas. The game has its fair share of cutscenes, but they're mostly to introduce the monsters.
Right.
They're not to introduce the world, and they really do let the world speak for itself. And the most beautiful moments of the game come at times that are almost kind of like hidden away in nooks. Probably the first one of these that I really found, and thus the most impactful, was once I finally started getting to the top of the forest region.
Right.
Because this is a very cool and intentional thing. Because they choose where the monsters inhabit, in that zone in particular, as you get into fighting more difficult monsters, you actually go physically further up the tree.
Right.
So when you first do it, you're like, oh, it's just like a jungle zone. You're at the bottom and you hunt in the jungle. But then eventually you start like climbing up the roots and getting like the cool nest that's up there at the top. That place kept getting more and more vertical in cool ways. And there's just one little sectioned off area in when you're walking through the vines where if you just walk up the right place, the canopy breaks open and you can see like the ludicrous gorgeousness of the new world stretching out before you.
Right.
And it made me stop and sit back, and I think that speaks a lot for the environment design. And God, I haven't even gotten to how fantastic of an idea the Coral Highlands were.
Man, okay, all right. So I agree with that. Especially from like the way that this game looks, the way that the game feels, everything like all of the ecology, like the small monsters, the plants, the animals, the things you can like capture, the things that fight you, all fit really well into the world. Like they really did kind of build an ecosystem to support everything in this game. I also feel like maybe that getting around in this game is a little bit of a fucking pain in my ass all the time.
Oh, come on.
And I feel like the Ancient Forest is like the one that I hate the most because of the fact that it's so vertical that you either have to fast travel and then jump down to stuff or climb up endless vines forever. And it's really kind of a hindrance.
But they knew how good their environmental design was, because that's the reason they made it every start menu screen, and each environment has its own like cool little tiny, like they didn't make it static, they didn't just make it a vista, they made it like these little bugs that are climbing around, and you got like a little eel down in the right corner that's like opening its mouth. like it's all really subtle and really great, and the music plays up with it well. But as for actual environmental traversal, I'm okay with the forest being confusing and horrible because it's the first area, and thus.
So it should be confusing and horrible to alienate new players.
No, it's the confusing and horrible parts of it in terms of navigation are all the vertical elements, which you never even have to think about, or in my case, know about until after like Anjanath at least.
Right.
And you spend the most time there, so it has the most like. Of all the areas, you kind of have this curve where the areas functionally have less space the further and later into the game that you get. Like the Elder Recess or whatever is way less complicated or interesting.
It is just interconnected arenas to fight specific monsters.
Right, and it gets more like that the further down the trail that you get. So the first area, the one that you spend the most time in, ends up having the most complexity because you have to go back to it most often. But like I don't know. You're right that if you tried to navigate the whole area on foot, it would be a goddamn pain. And especially since it's so vertical and the map isn't vertical, that you don't have. Like I wish I had a Metroid Prime map.
You always wish that you had a Metroid Prime map.
I know, I do.
I'm kind of on the same page as JJ. Yeah, like they look great and everything, but like I think the areas are really fun to traverse actually, and. It might just be a thing that's more specific to me, but I really like learning and navigating a space in a video game.
Right.
So I like all the zones quite a bit. I actually like the smaller ones less. But yeah, like I like how well they're designed because and how well they like house the monsters. Like I think they nailed the scale of the areas where like they feel big enough to house like all these different monsters that can show up in them like believably.
Yeah.
I think that's all really impressive, and like I said, I think they're fun to navigate and like actually track the monsters through. So I think it's an A+.
They're just big enough that you can't keep the totality of the area or arena square in your head. Like you can't look at it and think that like you can't really navigate your whole way through, so it ends up making it feel like this cohesive living space because you can't see the boundaries of it anymore.
Right. Like you could in previous games where there were literally loading zones in between different areas. There is also, like, mid-fight, there's a satisfying, like, physicality to the movement where, like, it feels good to, like, grappling hook up to a wedge beetle and, like, do a plunging attack on some poor fucker's skull with, like, a big hammer swing or, like, a hunting horn or something. It's just the in-between times that I take issue with. And, of course, I'm going to take issue with, like, some time-consuming fiddly bullshit. Because that's what I do professionally, is take issue with that.
Anything that can allow me to mine more, whatever, crystals.
Fucking mining. Andy and I failed Diablo's quest because he was like, ooh, let's mine this thing. And got flattened.
Yeah, I find like mining the crystal in this game to be like one of the most like strangely satisfying like things to do. It's like, one, because they look cool.
Look cool for sure.
And two, like it makes like a satisfying sound effect when you like chip away at them. You know, it feels good.
Right. The Foley in this game is insanely good. Also, just as I mentioned, like like when you find like a mucus or like the mud or whatever, and you scrape it into your like little container thing, and it like makes like this shik shik, and then you like close the thing, and it has that like noise. Oh, I love it. Oh god, I love it. So we're super, super long on this.
True.
Things that we didn't mention at all, just quickly. The Scout Flies is a great solution for decompartmentalizing the maps. Being able to like track a thing using like a little meter that builds up. Gets kind of annoying like when you're at like the mid stages where you're like, I gotta do this thing a couple of times before I have to go fight the monster, but I'm already used to fighting the monster. Middle part, I don't like. Beginning, and great, love them.
Yeah.
They brought back a lot of monsters for like the end game content, so like Teostra and Daoras, who I really wish they would have maybe branched out a little bit more when it came to like the boss monsters, because you're gonna fight them a whole lot.
Yeah.
The grappling hook is underutilized.
Agreed.
Those are my three things.
I almost wish the few times this game does have environmental interaction, it's so crazy and cool and surprising that like I feel like I want more of it, but I feel like I might also be that instinct and the impulse to want more might be the 5-year-old in me wanting to like shove ice cream down his throat until he explodes. Because the first time when I was up in like the nest region of the forest area and fighting, like a Rathalos, and it accidentally broke open the tree, it was just unbelievable. Like it completely went against all the expectations that you'd built up to that point for how things interact with a space, and it made you realize that like, oh, some parts of this aren't just invisible video game walls that tails clip through.
Right.
Some of them are giant dams that hold back a lot of water and then create like cool set piece moments where everyone's trying to get out of the waterfall.
With like an additional little area behind it that you can get to once it's been broken. Like stuff like that.
Yeah, stuff like that was fantastic, but I don't know the correct balance the perfect balance of amount of those interactables while still keeping the impact and surprise of each one that triggers. So my impulse is to not to want to change it, because when they did happen, they were so cool.
Right. I think we should move on to final thoughts. And I think that your discussion of that thing specifically is a great way to sort of like encapsulate how I feel about this game. And that is when Nergigante wakes up after going to nap sleep time, and he busts through the wall, and which he does every time. And then there's like a cloud of smoke that forms, so you can see his silhouette with like the blue light behind it. That is this game in a nutshell. The game presents itself as this like untouchable, crazy thing with all of these mechanics and all of this like crazy scenery, and you're tracking a monster in a new world, and everything is amazing the first time you see it, and then you repeat it a million bazillion times, and it loses that initial impact, but is still fun to do. It is seeing Nergigante's silhouette in the smoke for the 300th time and finding it funny instead of intimidating, but still enjoying it.
Indeed. Could not say anything better than that myself.
Okay. I've only played 53 hours of this game.
A mere 50.
Yeah, but that's true. Like for most people, play hundreds of hours of these games. So take what I say. Take that into account with what I say. But I like this game quite a bit. I thought I might bounce off of it. I thought I might have wasted $60 after the first couple times I played it. But once you get over the hump, if you have a friend, if you find some good tutorials or whatever, it's a lot of fun to get into. But like, I played through, I made the weapons I wanted. I got like 2 weapons up to like max level. I made all the armor I wanted. I completed the story with quotes. I don't know how much longer I'm going to play it. Like, I don't know if I'm the kind of person that's really going to dive into the mechanical game loop of it all, but I enjoyed it for the one playthrough quite a lot. So I think they succeeded in making this game more accessible to a general audience with mostly.
Yeah.
You know.
I think that's kind of the strength of World in comparison to the other ones, is exactly that, like, appeal. Mm-hmm. Also, the Great Sword is still actually the best weapon in Monster Hunter. Just, like, from a mechanical standpoint, it's the best one, period. Thank you for listening to NOCLIP this week.
What are we talking about next time?
Next time, we're going to kick off Mystery May, a.k.a. Anime, a.k.a.
Mystery
We're just going to go with
Anime.
Mystery May, I think. And we're going to be talking about 999. I don't remember the three things, but
9
hours.
persons, 9 hours.
9 doors?
9
Yeah,
friends.
yep.
9 friends.
It is 9 doors, yeah.
Okay.
I don't know the order of those things.
But it is, those are there.
Yeah.
Until that time, you can get a hold of us at our website, noclippodcast.com, or splattershot.pro. I feel like I need to keep mentioning that.
/Team Eco.
Where you can find all of our old episodes. I don't think we've really talked about much that's like Monster Hunter, but like, I don't know. You probably like Dark Souls, right?
He doesn't.
Exactly. Other than that, you know, we're on YouTube, iTunes, Google Play. However you're listening to us now, we're there too. Thank you. Good and good night. Perfect. Oh, fuck.
No! Ruined. We had to record the whole thing over.
Yep. That's the superstition. Story: The Handler. How they handled the handler. Mm-hmm. Handling handlers.
Why people seem to want to handle the handler.
Yeah, handling the handler's handles.
God damn it.